FuelGuard is a division of Guardian Fueling Technologies that specializes in cleaning contaminated fuel. So anybody who has fuel tanks, they need to know that that fuel will contaminate over time, and it'll start to corrode their system. Basically, like eat away the tank and the component parts. You'll have slow flow, frequent filter changes. For gasoline, ethanol blended gasoline, you get water in there, you get a phase separation, which could lead to cars shutting down in parking lots for retail owners. For diesel fuel, water gets into all fuel tanks, but when water enters diesel fuel, bacteria grows in it, starts to consume the hydrocarbons in the fuel, poops out sludge, creates an acidic environment, clogs up filters, causes a lot of corrosion. So, and it's a maintenance item too. It will come back. It is something that you can have fuel in your tanks. You've got to have a program for sampling, testing it, kind of keeping an eye on the fuel quality. Preventative maintenance plan is setting aside a certain scope of work at a predetermined time interval to check on the fuel quality. So one of our recommendations is to sample your tanks monthly. You would want to take a tank bottom sample with sampling device. Some are called bacon bombs or thieves or balers, but you want to make sure that you get a sample from the bottom of the tank. Stick your tanks with water detecting paste, and do a monthly inspection to make sure that there's no water getting in your tanks. Start there. Put eyes on your fuel. If it's not clean and clear, you got to take care of it. If you leave it for long periods of time, and we hear this often, we get clients who have called up. They've never cleaned their fuel, never cleaned their tanks. They've had some problems with their equipment. Had to change some injectors. Maybe this would be like a commercial fueling where they're fueling their own equipment. They might have slow flow, frequent filter changes, and just like little symptoms that kind of lead up to a point where everything's shutting down and they're changing filters every week or every couple of days. Those are situations where you have water that's built up in the tank, bacteria is growing for years and years. It can really wreak havoc on a lot of the components of the system, and then it's damaging your equipment that you're running the fuel in, but it's damaging your storage tank too. And that can be an environmental issue as well, because you want to make sure that corrosion can eat through the tanks, and over time you can absolutely have a hole if you don't take care of it. Guardian started FuelGuard because there were certain service calls that we were getting repeat calls to the same place over and over and over again. And like for instance, meters. Meters inside dispensers. Some meters can tolerate particulate, some can't. And so, if you see a meter change, you should check on the fuel quality because you want to make sure it's not the fuel screwing the meter up. Some of these sites were getting meter changes over and over and over again. And this was shortly after. This was a few years after diesel fuel was changed to ultra low sulfur diesel. This was back in 2006, when the EPA required, it was the Air Quality Act of 2006, they required sulfur to be dropped down to 15 parts per million in diesel fuel. That plays a huge factor in the bacteria growing, because as the sulfur was stripped out, that now allowed bacteria to grow in the diesel fuel. So shortly after 2006, all these symptoms started coming up of people having problems with their components in their tanks or flow, and also same thing with ethanol. When ethanol was introduced into fuel, that caused a lot of tanks to have issues. So Guardian started. So as Guardian had these repeat service calls for all these components, they started really looking into, okay, well, what is the problem here? Why are we not fixing this issue? Why are we having to change the same meter over and over and over again? As a side note, it would probably be better for Joey to actually give part of the story, but Guardian started looking into it and got involved in what was called the Battelle report. Joey was actually on a board where they started looking into the fuel quality and where this could be coming from. So the Battelle report basically came out and determined and identified, okay, there's bacteria growing in this fuel. And the bacteria is creating acids both in the fuel and in the vapor space. And that acidic environment causes the corrosion of the components. And so it's like a degradation snowball. It just causes one problem after another after another. And so Guardian saw it as an opportunity to provide our customers a more complete service and get to the heart of the issue that was causing a lot of component failure.
What is the most common service call that FuelGuard gets? What is the most common problem that you get phone calls about?
Slow flow on diesel.
Okay, what's that caused by?
So what happens is, as the bacteria grows in the fuel, it creates a sludge, and it gets picked up by the motor. And it goes up through the motor, into the hoses, into the dispenser, clogs the filter in the dispenser, because there's a filter right before the fuel goes into your vehicle, or whatever you're fueling. That thing clogs up, and because it's just picking up straight sludge. And what happens is as over time, that sludge level in the bottom of the tank will grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. So, every tank is different. The environment plays a part in how water enters the tank. But if you get an inch of water in a tank very quickly, within a few months, within 30 days, you're going to have bacteria growing. Mm-hmm. But that bacteria, they're not going to be in numbers that you're going to see operational issues. But bacteria also grows exponentially, so your problems are going to grow exponentially as well. So as you get 3, 4, 6 months, a year down the road, you're going to start seeing problems elsewhere.
Okay. What is the most unusual? What's the most unusual situation that you have encountered?
We found drugs in a tank one time. We found a brick of coke in a tank one time.
What?
Yeah. So, it's not like we tested it or like confirmed it, right. But one of our guys was filtering. He was changing the bag. So what we do is we sweep the bottom of the tank with hoses and wands and stuff like that, and our bag filters catch everything that goes through the fuel, right? And he was changing the bag filters while the machine was shut down. It's just a typical routine thing. And he pulled out. I have a photo of it. We could probably put it in the video too.
Sure.
Actually, let me see if I can pull it up. Look at my screen. Yes. But it kind of looks like a brick of cocaine. So he suspected that somebody dropped it in there if they were trying to get away from the cops or something like that. I don't know. People have dumped funky chemicals in. Well, I'll tell you, I guess, when I'm a little bit more in front of the camera. Fuck. I don't know where it is. I'll have to have Ryan send it to me.
Maybe the DEA sees it.
I want you to see this because I don't know if it would be worth putting in the video, because if it's not, then maybe I'll give you a different answer.
I mean, if we, I wouldn't cut to you putting it in there, but let's just cut from that, you saying that, to cut to that photo if you send it to me.
Yeah.
And then,
I don't know.
you guys, let me turn the camera off before I ask this question. Did you guys call the local authorities?
No, it was just trash. The whole thing was saturated, completely saturated in diesel. There you go. So, the weirdest thing that we ever found in
Okay. Was
what we believed to be a brick of cocaine.
okay. What do
Rags. We find rags a lot too. Right. Good, how are you? Yes.